Talk to me now. Take me into the future a little bit. 5 or 10 years from now, what are we going to be saying have been sort of the most dynamic elements of the marketplace?
The next big thing is connected autonomous vehicles. It will change how travelers behave.
Yep. Welcome to episode 1 of Inside Steer, Conversations with Experts. The series where we're going to meet some of the people shaping Steer's work across North America. I'm Herb Higginbotham, Executive President of Steer North America. If you're new to us, we're a global consultancy that supports the organizations that provide the critical services and infrastructure that move our communities and shape our world. With me today is David Cuneo. He's our Senior Vice President leading traffic and revenue forecasting here at Steer North America. And we're going to talk today a little bit about how Dave got involved in the market, what his outlook is for tolling and revenue going forward in North America in light of a lot of rapidly evolving circumstances. Hi, Dave. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Herb?
I'm doing just fine. Talk to me now. Take me into the future a little bit. 5 or 10 years from now, what are we going to be saying have been sort of the most dynamic elements of the marketplace?
Not sure if it's 5-10 years, where beyond, but sort of the next big thing is connected autonomous vehicles. It will change how travelers behave. Just with the ease of travel, when they're completely autonomous driving, people could live further from work. So overall travel could increase. You might have, people who aren't able to drive today, the old, the young, you could have cabs driving them for what their trip requires. And so overall, there could be more activity that happens. These cabs also could better utilize the capacity that we do have available. So maybe over time, there's a lessening need to keep expanding and building more capacity because the technology will allow for greater throughput.
So, yeah, I mean, you talked in there, Dave, a little bit about how, maybe, throughput and capacity increases. And at the same time, I heard in there too, some message, demand potentially increases too. Like we talk a lot about, in our field about, value of time, being a key factor. Does my value of time, I imagine it fundamentally changes if I'm watching a movie and, just kicked back, right? Versus I'm actively moving the vehicle. Maybe congestion becomes less concerning to me. Is that some of the things that you all sort of think about when you think about CAV?
Yeah, we do. That's part of it. There's sort of the value of time and willingness to pay for travel time savings. So there's one, how can you spend the time while you're in the vehicle? If it's an autonomous vehicle, maybe you can do some other uses. And so the value of saving time is maybe a little less than it would be otherwise. But there will always be those urgent trips, no matter whether you're able to use the time productively or not. You need to be somewhere as fast as
still starts at the
you
same
can.
time. Yeah,
Yep,
work still
exactly.
starts at the same time. Yeah.
So that's sort of, as we think about it, what we need to balance. And then there's cases where if you don't have a completely autonomous vehicle, but your vehicle does have some levels of autonomy, some of the lower levels of autonomy, there is technology if that can be added along certain roads that would allow your vehicle to operate more autonomously. And so there may be, you can use your time for something else. So your value of time might go down, but the value of this added technology and the value of the autonomy that's being offered to you could go up and offset that or even increase. And so that these are some of the dynamics that we think about when analyzing what that future might look like.
Let's maybe zoom out a little bit and just, as you, look and think of the market at large, you've been at this for a while. In the last 5 or 10 years, what have been some of the key things that you've sort of seen evolve from the beginning of your career to maybe the more recent past?
About the market, we've talked a little bit about express lanes and managed lanes, and it's around 10 years ago that the first ones other than, privately developed and operated ones were being built and about to be operated. Before that time, there was some uncertainty about, how travelers would be willing to pay for those benefits. It hadn't been proven yet. So there was some skepticism. As we've continued to work on that, we see a growing trend where the performance, the traffic and revenue performance, continues to get stronger and stronger as travelers, do see and recognize all the benefits that these express lane projects are providing to them. So that's been interesting and exciting to see how that's developed. On the side of sort of what's made our job different, and this is now looking specifically at the modeling and forecasting work that we do, is just the growth of the big data sets and how we're able to use that data to develop and calibrate our forecasting models. Back in the day, I was out in the field counting cars, with clickers, getting a handful of observations that I might be able to get during a peak period. Now with big data, we could get years worth of information on what the travel times are and look at the variability in those travel times. And so there's a lot more information that's available to us.
Worked a lot in the transit space, and we would do our bus counts. We would get up at 4 a.m, get out on that first bus, and it'd literally be pen and paper, just
Yeah.
yes, on off, on off. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all of those things. I'm curious too, going back to sort of your first point, sort of on managed lanes and sort of some of the market perceptions. It strikes me that that's allowed communities and regions to think about, how, again, how you price and pay for infrastructure differently than you did 10 years ago. Or are you seeing that sort of as then maybe being an effect of, the success now of managed and express lanes?
I mean, there's a couple things going on. First, just with
Yep.
the growing widespread use of electronic toll paying, whether it be transponders or without transponders, the ability to capture license plate images, look up the addresses from the DMVs and send invoices. But allowing all of that toll collection to be easier than having to stop and make change and so forth. There's a lot more flexibility. And so we're able to do that dynamic tolling, which does allow unlocking some of the benefits that express lanes can provide. For me, coming from an airline yield management background, it was, interesting to see how the tolling, typically was one price. And sort of, one of the projects I was excited to be able to do is working for a project, Chesapeake Expressway to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but in Virginia, that they had built this road primarily to serve traffic that was going to the Outer Banks on peak summer Saturdays, to alleviate 3-hour delays. So they built this, but the toll road for its first 10 years had the same toll rate, no matter what time of day, what time of year, every day, all the same. But I sort of took the yield management background from my airline experience and said, what about if we put a higher toll rate on those peak summer weekends, which is, the people who are getting the most benefit from this road that was built. Let's align that price with the benefits that they're getting. And they've they increased the toll rate quite substantially for the peak summer weekends, and traffic, they're hardly shifted away because these people were really valuing what that facility provided. So it was, for me, exciting to know that the technology does support allowing more of this differential pricing that is taking place in other industries, allowing us to bring it into the toll industry. So that's been fun.
Well, there's clearly still a evolving range of problems to solve for. is that after doing this for so long, is that what sort of really, get you up every day to go back at again? Or what are some of the other factors that really sort of, keep you at it and keep you sort of innovating and motivating yourself?
Definitely seeing these advances, you know, to make does make the job more interesting. Seeing how the world's going to change and being able to look at that and be a part of that is exciting. But even more basically, for me, just being involved in projects that improve transportation mobility for locations all across the country, that's excited me for some time. Knowing that I get to work on projects that result in real tangible infrastructure that gets built shortly after is exciting. I remember one of the first toll bridges that I worked on in Virginia after the financing and the ribbon cutting, getting to go back a year or so later when the bridge now was the span was in place and, you know, done in the hard hat and getting a tour of the road, walking over it, before traffic was going to be open, but seeing that, this wasn't there before and, the work that I did helped support the financing of it and leading to this construction and then going back, a year later, seeing traffic using it and the improvements in travel times and, just seeing that tangible impact of better travel options and how that improves people's lives. That's quite rewarding.
What are you seeing now? Just the way we work, just the way that we, sort of, build, design, fund infrastructure fundamentally change going forward. We're in a really interesting economic and political reality right now. So I'm just curious, sort of, how do we navigate that as practitioners?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's so much change, but maybe a continuation of a trend that we have seen. So a lot of my work has supported, well, some supported public sector, but a lot of it has been working with private sector developments who enter into public-private partnerships to build and operate transportation projects, toll projects. So while these P3s have existed for a while, there has been continued growth, I think, in the interest for these projects, especially when you consider, what the public sector is dealing with aging infrastructure and constrained budgets. And so as more and more P3 projects have been entered into and the results of the projects, the infrastructure is in place, with that a growing sophistication in understanding of what are the risks and the rewards and how to structure P3 so that those get shared more properly between the public and private sector. I think there should be more of those moving into the future. And so I see that trend continuing. And in particular, I think one area that it could go into is sort of the growth in technology. And with the growth in technology, you know, the connected autonomous vehicles, EVs, TNCs, they're changing how people are driving and behaving. And, I think the private sector developers, maybe sure the manufacturers will add a lot of that technology, but these private sector developers might be able to accelerate some adoption of the technology by, an express lane that does add the connected technology infrastructure so that you can operate your level 2 connected autonomous vehicle fully autonomous if you use their lanes because of that investment that they made. And so I think then, by doing that, maybe people become more accepting of that type of use of technology and that could help stimulate faster adoption of technology. So that's an exciting trend that I could see happening.
Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you even get into tolling and revenue forecasting?
When I graduated with a civil engineering degree, I through all the coursework determined that transportation, as opposed to structural or environmental, was the area I wanted to focus most in. And I got a job with a large AE firm doing transportation planning. There, I quickly became focused on doing network modeling and forecasting and analysis. With that experience, one of the seniors in my office who I worked with had connections with our Hong Kong office, and I became a modeler on a lot of the infrastructure work, the forecasting work that was happening for projects all across Asia. That included sort of my first taste of doing forecast for supporting of toll facility investments and toll roads, toll bridges across Asia. I decided to go back to school to get a master's in transportation and studying at MIT, located in Boston. So that was interesting, and that was you know, through that research, through the coursework, I learned a lot more about forecasting and optimization fundamentals, which formed a good basis for my career moving forward. After graduating, despite previously having focused pretty exclusively on surface transportation, I went to work for an airline, got involved in their yield management group. And I did continue to focus on demand forecasting, and got a bit more involved in network optimization. And so it was a fun time. The airlines are very dynamic organizations, and it was quite gratifying to see how contributions that I might make on a daily basis would impact the profits of a flight the next day or shortly in the future. I later then moved back to Boston to work for applied economics consulting firm, uh, where I got to focus on pretty much all modes of transportation. While there were many interesting, exciting projects that I did get involved in, despite all those other modes that I got to focus on, it was during that time that I really became more involved and active in forecasting for toll facilities, doing traffic and revenue studies for toll facilities. One of the projects that we did at that economics consultant firm was a traffic and revenue study for toll facilities in New Jersey. And on that one, we teamed with Steer. We had members of their team come and work in our office for a few months. And, we got to work side by side and sort of saw the good cultural fit of Steer and the team that we had at the other consulting firm. And that led to, a group of us coming over to Steer in 2009 and sort of forming the starting group for Steer in the U.S. Since that time, I continued to focus a lot on toll facilities, and I've led the traffic and revenue forecasting team to helping grow Steer in North America. I continue to be one of the leaders of the infrastructure team. I've been involved in almost all of the traffic and revenue forecasting projects that we've performed in North America over the last 15 years.
Dave, that's, I mean, a rich history that you have there. And, I mean, you're at Steer now as a recognized leader in the industry in terms of traffic and revenue forecasting and what you're providing. You're leading teams that are doing that. I'm kind of curious, now sort of as you're looking back, I mean, you're, clear mentor, again, to our teams, to the community at large. Were there any particular mentors in your career that you felt like left some foundational messages along the way?
Sure. Yeah. A couple that were both Steer colleagues. The first was John Bottom, who was I worked with at the prior company, Charles River Associates, and actually go even longer back with John. He was he was the TA for the transportation economics course I took at MIT.
Oh, wow.
But when we came over to Steer, he was the head of North America for Steer, and working on projects with him, seeing him in that sort of lead role, he helped instill in me sort of the curiosity of why things are as they are, both projects, what are the key um motivation for the work that we're doing, what are the key questions that clients need answered, and that sort of stuck with me, as well as then thinking about sort of developing the team as we grew in steer in North America, sort of you know do we like working together, uh, with a consulting firm, such as steer, the people are the biggest asset that the company has. And so it's, finding a great high level quality of people that like working together and work well together. He just highlighted how critical that was. And that was, quite influential, both him distilling how to think about, our clients' problems, as well as building the team that we work with. And the other mentor, when I joined Steer, Charles Russell, was sort of the lead of infrastructure globally. Charles in the UK. And early on, got to work on some projects where Charles came over, and we worked together on some projects, traffic and revenue projects in the US, including a quite memorable one where we were looking at a bridge to the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and spending a uh, summer weekend in the Outer Banks with Charles, where he found the most hippie-ish place to have a very relaxing breakfast. Learned a lot about how to look at infrastructure projects from Charles.
Nice, nice. From the shores of the Outer Banks. Very
Yeah.
fun. So let's talk about projects maybe a little bit, because I know you've been involved in a lot of really high attention projects over your career.
I guess one the sort of the biggest one I maybe would highlight was outside DC in Northern Virginia, the I-66 outside the Beltway Express Lanes project. This was sort of the first one that was being bid after the ones in Texas had been built and started being operated. So there was a little bit of gaining momentum around express lane projects. And this is one where we supported the winning bidder, who altogether the project was some close to $4 billion investment. And the client we worked with, we took what we learned from, they were operating the other express lane projects in Texas, and we worked with them there, and got to learn a bit more of actually how travelers were responding to having express lanes, what they found valuable, and so forth. And we were able to leverage that and apply it to this project in Northern Virginia as we were doing our traffic and revenue forecasting. And they put together a successful bid where they were not only going to build these 20 plus miles of express lanes, but they also were giving a payment to Virginia, to VDOT, whereas the competition was asking for a subsidy. So they, on the foundation of the forecasting work that we conducted, they were able to put together a quite attractive bid that was good for them and good for the state of Virginia. The project has since been built and open to traffic in 2022, and the performance it's performed well, and it's providing that travel time reliability to a section in Northern Virginia, which often has a lot of congestion. So it's provided, what it was promised to do, large investment, but our client is seeing the return that they looked for, and the state of Virginia won both by getting the infrastructure built and also getting the payment from the private sector. So it's been a big success all around.
as you're sort of planning out that facility and there's not a lot of sort of background to go for, what were some of the ways that you and the team sort of thought about how to apply, all of the great network modeling theory into practice that's something new?
Yeah, I mean, at the core, sort of with express lanes, behaviorally, it's a little bit different. Often in network model, we could just think about sort of travelers are making their choices primarily on if they're willing to pay to use a toll facility, what's the time savings that they're realizing. And sometimes it's maybe not even truly the actual time savings, but what their perception of that is. With express lane, it gets a bit more into also what's the reliability of the travel time, because the toll rates are going to be dynamically set to ensure that there's a premium travel time that travelers using those express lanes will realize. So what's that travel time reliability? Is there also safety and comfort benefits that travelers perceive relative to what they experience in the general purpose lanes? And so it's figuring out how to incorporate that into the standard network model that we take from a metropolitan planning organization and the regional travel demand model, and customize it so that we could forecast to the specific project that's being analyzed. And so it takes a good degree of care, and we were able to see and leverage what behaviors were starting to be observed from other express lane projects. So,
Do people in different regions typically behave differently, or do you see some commonalities? What do you sort of notice?
there's some of both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, commonality wise, I think Steer's done some research. I think it's sort of come out elsewhere that sort of the biggest driver often is not necessarily the income of the traveler, but what's the urgency of their trip. When people are in a more urgent situation, they're more willing to pay for the time savings and, importantly, the reliability that they get from the express lanes. What could vary a bit is sort of what's the familiarity of travelers in that region for paying a toll? How willing are they to pay for it? Often we see for express lanes that it's work related trips, whether it's companies or small businesses, the professionals, electrician, plumber, who realize if they use the express lanes and they know they can get from point A to point B reliably on a given time, they might be able to make save enough time over the course of the day to hit another job. And so sort of they see great value in the benefits of using those sorts of facilities. And so that could be something that maybe initially isn't known when express lanes start in a new region, but it's something that will be developed over time as more and more people do recognize those benefits.
Nice. I chuckled to myself when you were mentioning urgency, and I was just thinking of myself when I'm taking my kids to, their soccer or baseball tournament. And if we're on time, then I'm taking the free lanes. And if we're running behind, like I'm in that mental, like I want to go get there as fast as I can. So
Yep,
uh,
absolutely.
I hear you. That really resonated with me. Well, it sounds like we've got, a lot of work that we need to roll up our sleeves on, a lot of, new questions that we'll have to keep asking. You talked a lot about, again, living in a world with more data and sort of, what that means. Dave, I really appreciate your time and insights today. It's clear there's, a long sort of history that we've come and, tollways and managed lanes. And it sounds like there's the next decade or two, we'll see even more for us to be focused on.
Yeah,
Thanks for your
it's
time
an
today.
exciting time. Thanks, sir.
Nice. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This was our first episode of Inside Steer, Conversations with Experts. Thanks for joining Dave and myself, and see you again soon. Take care.